I'm telling you, Donato, like on the drive as we're approaching Amherst, the rain clouds parted, the sun came out. We arrived on Amherst College, and the co-eds were walking around everywhere, and it was like, like the Disney scene. The birds were whistling louder. And I was just like, Amherst town is bustling with pizza shops and, places to go shopping. And it just had a really quaint kind of college feel to it.
Yeah.
And I got on campus. I remember going to this place.
Is there anything better than a trip getting ready? Nope. For a long journey where our podcast released a new appy, searching for a fade feeling, new fixation. Giving this a subscribe is the same sensation. Started with the day ones, they gave us fuel to support the season. Could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here for a reason. Notification bells, text some friends, all to let you know. Check your Bluetooth, connect, talking with Donato.
All right, welcome in, everyone. Episode 67, Peter the Great, with our guest, Peter Conroy. I'm going to tell you, Peter, there's only one other known, I'm talking like worldwide known city. That's St. Petersburg over in Russia. You may have heard of it. Beautiful city. I'm going to go and visit one day. But from what I've gathered, you also, my word, you're in another internationally known city. You are a New Yorker. How are you doing today, Peter?
Doing great, Donato. Thanks very much for having me.
No, that's great. Yeah, Peter and I, we do have history, but I'm going to be introducing him to the rest of you listeners here. So, Peter, let's jump right in. I want to start with a little bit of your background. So, Peter, where did you grow up? Where do you claim?
So, I was born in the Midwest in Minneapolis, Minnesota in the 70s.
I had a fraternity brother that lives out there. He has nothing but good things to say. Shout out to Phineas. Then I met a gentleman who told me that the Hmong festivals, one of the best, he said the best, is the one out there in Minneapolis area. I can't say it's right in the city, if you're familiar with that. And then, of course, we all know Prince is Minnesota's own. But what would you say, Peter, if you had to convince me to come out to Minnesota? I won't confine you to just Minneapolis. Why would I come out to Minnesota to visit?
Well, I'd advise you not to go out during the winter.
Okay.
But Minneapolis is actually, it's an interesting, although I didn't grow up aware of kind of some of the racial tensions that do exist there. It's we had George Floyd, of course, in Minneapolis.
Yes, sir.
In recent history, and there are racial tensions in the U.S. In Minneapolis and in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But if I were to talk and try to be kind of the travel agent, to espouse the virtues of Minneapolis and Minnesota.
Yeah.
We would really first start talking about I think the parks and recreation. The wide open spaces. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes.
Yes.
So when the glaciers moved through the Midwest of the United States, they scooped up a lot of soft soil and then left behind all of the melted ice water. So there's thousands and thousands of lakes. There's also, of course, the Mississippi River and some other rivers that kind of meet up and join in Minnesota. As such, the populace is very much into doing outdoor stuff, whether that be skiing, although it's mostly kind of ice skiing. We don't get powder like you get on the East Coast and the West Coast.
Yeah.
But biking, running, jogging, walking, canoeing, paddling. Case in point, my mother has a cabin, not in Minnesota, but in Wisconsin, the neighboring state. Yeah. And there, she goes there, almost every weekend for 2, 3, 4 days. Uh-huh. And, they're on the water, they're boating, they're paddling, they're canoeing, swimming, and this kind of just outdoor lifestyle, camping, although it wasn't part of my family's history, but hunting and fishing, I think, are also really popular. So that would be the first thing I would say is the outdoorsness. Now, if I were to get on a kind of a politician's soapbox, or a street hustler's soapbox, Minneapolis also has the nickname of being Moneyapolis. So there was a lot of corporate money there, with certain companies like 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing is what the 3M stand for. And some large financial institutions, Wells Fargo, for example, more recently. But there's quite a few larger corporations that are headquartered in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. The Minneapolis-St. Paul airport is fairly large. And as you mentioned earlier about this Hmong population, it's also very interesting that the populace, the demographics of Minneapolis have developed in a very interesting way. Not only the Hmong population, but also the Ethiopian population, Mexican, and many other kind of smaller demographic pockets have grown up. So the food in Minnesota, it's said to kind of be second to New York in terms of the variety of cuisine that you can find in the city. So there's a lot of great things that are really going for it. But you know, I am a Black man, and I do recognize that there are racial tensions there, and maybe we'll discuss this further later in the interview. But there's a reason I was not so privy to a lot of those racial tensions growing up.
Yeah, no, we have levels and many bridges to cross in this time. I have to, while we're on it, have you ever did any ice fishing in your time in Minnesota?
I never went ice fishing, no.
Okay. And I'm going to say, with some of those outdoor activities, did you do any? Like, are you a hiker? You like to get out and backpack? Did any of that catch on for you?
It definitely did. My father was, and just incidentally, I was adopted into a Caucasian family, Irish and German descent. And my father was a Boy Scout, and my brother was an Eagle Scout, and I got into the Scouts at a young age. I rose to the rank of life just before Eagle Scout, but then a lot of the older brothers or Boy Scouts kind of left left our troop, and it kind of lost some of the flair, some of the panache, some of the fun. And I didn't pursue the final rank of Eagle, but our troop was, it's not always the same with every troop, Boy Scout troop in America, but ours was heavily focused on camping and outdoors activities. And I have great memories of going to Boy Scout camp in my youth. Really great memories. Kind of different camping trips and building fires and, pushing a sled through 2 foot thick snow, Klondike Derby. I definitely did a lot of outdoors things. And I was also very sportive. I followed again in my brother's footsteps as well as my sister's. I was a soccer player and I was a swimmer. Later, I gave up swimming to learn how to play basketball.
Yeah. So I was going to get to that. I was kind of curious. What are you guys big on out there? I'm going to guess you guys are all hockey players, and I'm going to ask you if you can ice skate also. I love some stereotypes, especially when they're funny.
Yeah, I can ice skate. I don't particularly love it. I preferred doing inline skating, rollerblading, and I really got into that when I was in New York. I have, stories this is kind of like the 90s. I would, clamp on my rollerblades, and I was living in Brooklyn for most of the time that I lived in New York in the 90s, and would rollerblade across the Brooklyn Bridge up to Central Park. And then I had nice kind of slip out boots, and the rollerblade kind of chassis would disconnect. So I would just take off the chassis if I got tired and take the train back home. But, there were many times I was holding onto the back of a New York City taxi cab, going 30, 40 miles an hour on my rollerblades, as a youth, I definitely have had angels watching over me during my lifetime.
A modern day Marty McFly. Let's see, he was on a skateboard. So his detached a lot quicker than
a hoverboard.
Yeah, there you are. You're right about that. Okay, so how much time did you spend in Minnesota? Did you go all the way to senior year high school?
Yes, I did. All the way to senior year in high school. That's right.
I always like to ask this a little bit later when the listeners can learn a little bit more about you. But just since I mentioned it, I'm going to go to it now. It's senior year. You just got your food out of the school cafeteria. What table are you sitting at, Peter?
Oh, so which year is this? Senior year, you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, first of all, I always brown bagged my lunch. It wasn't food from the cafeteria. Always brown bagged. Mm-hmm. And let's see here. I had kind of made the transition in my senior year of high school. I first started asking the question, what does it mean for me to be Black? Yeah. So I was often sitting next to, you're going to think I'm about to say with Black students, but it was actually with my good friend, my best friend, what is the term in the wedding? My best man.
Yeah.
So he and I would often sit together. Like I remember I was running for, and I won class president. Ooh. And my friend is a white guy, but he was a DJ, hip hop DJ, and a rapper. And he created this rap over a popular 90s beat for my kind of campaign song. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time with him. But even though I was looking at what does it mean to be Black, I gotta be real honest. I think I was still sitting with the friends that I had cultivated over the many years, the friends that were in Boy Scouts, the friends on the swim team, the friends from the soccer team.
Yeah.
Just thinking back to senior year, it was such a blur for me because, I was just all over the place, very busy with college applications. And, I was valedictorian for my school and yep. And, so I was just, doing everything I could to keep my grades up. And that meant, sometimes working through lunch and doing homework and stuff. But that's who I was sitting with. I think I was starting to meet and interact and socialize with Black people and other Black students in my senior year. Yeah. I think I was still sitting predominantly with white people.
So let's go back to the sports. I'm a big sports fan. Mm-hmm. Sounds like you did swim and play soccer into your senior year. Any accolades you want to pass on? All city, all county, all region, state?
Swimming, we did very good. We went from kind of third or fourth in the city to becoming the city powerhouse swim team, all under the leadership of our wonderful now deceased swim coach Neil Anderson. Just a terrific powerhouse, light in this world type of coach. He just orchestrated the takeover of swimming. And so I went to South High School. South High Swimming rose to become the powerhouse in the city. Also in regionals, we started to climb the ranks. And in my years, we started sending swimmers to state. And after I had left South High, I think we started actually ranking in the state championships. I did go to state in a 4x100 relay, and we made it. I did my part by cutting off almost a couple seconds, which is quite substantial time for 100-yard freestyle. But when I got to state, man, my goggles came down over my mouth when I dived in. So I wear contacts. I was essentially blind and like dog paddling, and it was just a big fiasco. But hey, I can still say I made it to state. So
I need to know here, the Twin Cities. Where do I go first? Am I going to Minneapolis first? Or going to St. Paul? What do you recommend between the two?
I'm biased. I'm a Minneapolis guy. I like St. Paul. There's the Science Museum there. There's some good restaurants. It is it's comparable in size. Culture wise, it's somewhat similar. I feel like Minneapolis is a little bit bigger. It's where the University of Minnesota is primarily located. And I'm just biased. Like my dad taught at the University of Minnesota. He was a chemistry professor there. When I would go out to clubs, to kind of hear, hip hop and burgeoning rap, that I don't think I ever went to a St. Paul club. Everything was in downtown Minneapolis. When I went to go see Biz Markie and Big Daddy Kane perform, that was at what's the main club where Prince first performed? It's slipping my mind right now. Fifth Ave.
Okay.
So I'm biased. I'd say, go to Minneapolis above St. Paul, but if I grew up in St. Paul, I'd probably be aware of a lot of the beauty and the attractions that you'd find in St. Paul as well. So, don't cross it off your list. I have nothing adverse or negative to say about St. Paul, but I'm biased towards Minneapolis.
No, you helped us out. We got to start somewhere. So you're just gonna start us off in Minneapolis. That's hard on Minneapolis because if you start there, whatever we find, if St. Paul one-ups it, that's what happens with when you're the first up. What comes after could be the lasting effect. So we'll see. I'm definitely going out. I'm going to take up my buddy and on his offer to come out to the Hmong Festival with him when he's out there. So I'm going. I heard that
is your buddy a Kappa?
No, he's not. Unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It doesn't mean he can't end up one day, but currently, no, he is not.
Okay.
So you're sick, Minneapolis. I have heard that there are tunnels throughout the city that you could get from one location a few blocks over and maybe not have to get out onto the external environment. That atmospheric condition will not affect you. There's some tunnels, some corridors, and you could stay indoors the entire time.
You're getting closer. Not tunnels. Corridors are closer. It's actually an elevated kind of connection system. So these are above ground on the second floor of most of the buildings in downtown Minneapolis, some in, I think, St. Paul. It's called the Skyway system. And you can walk internally, you can get your exercise, you can walk miles indoors. So yes, that is true.
Man. Okay, now that's kind of cool. I mean, that's something you guys gotta lead with that from here going on. I bet most people don't know that. I've had a lot of Minnesota talk. I'll just put it that way. The Purple People Eaters. Are you a fan?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in New York and here for quite some time.
Yeah.
I like to say now that I'm from New York, but New Yorkers will still say I'm not a New Yorker. Born and raised here.
Right.
But my bias is for professional sports, and I don't follow them really that closely. But if the Timberwolves are playing, if the Vikings are playing, I'm kind of rooting. Well, I'm pretty much definitely rooting for them. If it's not a Minnesota team, I'll be rooting for the New York teams. I do tend to be kind of an underdog supporter, though. So if it's any sort of, if I don't have any skin in the game, I'm kind of hoping for the one that hasn't won the championship for 40 years, to finally get their chance or something like that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think we were all fans of the Minnesota Vikings the year that you guys had Randall Cunningham, Randy Moss, and all I do is catch touchdowns himself, Mr. Carter. I'm telling you, we all were watching. And then there was a rebirth when Dante Culpepper went there. I loved Robert Smith. In my mind, he was the fastest gentleman ever. I think he went to Ohio State. Don't know how they let him get to Minnesota. So yeah, I think we all were fans at some point of the Minnesota Vikings. I think I can speak for most listeners.
I've always been impressed with in certain positions, Minnesota seems to do great with wide receivers.
Yes.
It has a fantastic history of wide receivers.
Right.
Phenomenal, right? A lot of Hall of Famer wide receivers. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. Yeah. You guys have done okay with a few running backs. So Adrian Peterson will go into the Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, I know Robert Smith won't, but he had some amazing years, especially after having knee injuries and staying in the league as long as he did. You guys ran Dalvin Cook out of town. I thought maybe if he could have stayed a little longer, he would have had a bigger following. Yeah, I guess I'm a little more of a fan than I thought of the Vikings.
I have to be honest. I don't, I know the big players, international players, but I actually am more of a football supporter. So I grew up playing soccer, and I love getting treated when there's a World Cup going on. I was I mentioned earlier being an underdog supporter. I was all in Argentina's corner because Messi hadn't had that kind of pinnacle of success, and I was just kind of rooting for him. And I was really happy kind of with how gracious he accepted that, and just have a lot of respect for his style of play. He's a very intelligent player that scans the field and gets other people involved. Certainly can and will and does, lead the charge at times, but also an incredible assist player. I love the creativity of the game. I love the energy of the game, and it's okay with me, kind of the long drawn out battles where there might be only 1 or 2 points scored. That's okay with me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. To come back, so a swimmer, a soccer player, I'm going to say endurance was your game, but what were you known for on the pitch?
On the pitch, versatility. I started as a fullback, which is a defensive position. It's the line that comes just in front of the goalkeeper. Then I moved and I was always on the right side. I had a stronger right foot. Then I moved to the halfback position, which is the line between the defenders and the forwards. And then I moved up to right winger, and specializing in crossing the ball into the center of the field. But I had quite a lot of versatility. I was a strong player. I've always had a low center of gravity. So, that's probably going to help me as I'm aging, and in a few decades, I know how to fall without hurting myself. There's a lot of falling in soccer. And hopefully not intentionally. So I guess versatility, and then kind of my my center of gravity being kind of a solid player.
Yeah. All right. So senior year, you said that you were working hard on applications. Where did you ultimately end up?
So I had about a stack of 6 applications, and for want of another strategy, I decided to do these applications alphabetically. So, Amherst was in there, Bates was in there, Harvard, MIT were in there, and I hadn't done any college visits, and I had really wanted to go to Bates for some reason. So I decided to do Bates first. Finished the application, moved on to Amherst, finished that application, and then I think I might have been starting Harvard or something. I don't remember what was the third one, but the typewriter ink, it ran out. And this was like a Sunday night. The applications were due it had to be postmarked the next day. There was no way I was going to finish them. So I applied to 2 colleges, Bates and Amherst. And, had the typewriter been there, maybe I would have been at Harvard. Who knows? I'm really happy about where I ended up, and I'll tell that story quickly. But, my Bates was my first choice and Amherst was my backup, essentially. And those are not, 2 schools to sneeze at. I think in the stack, I also had like the University of Minnesota, just in case something had gone wrong, like my safety net. And then we went on a road trip. My father had passed away in my junior year of high school. So it was my mom and I out on the trip. And I'm sorry, no, it wasn't Bates. It was Williams College was my top choice. And and that's the application I filled out first, not Bates. And we visited Williams, and it was a dark and rainy and overcast day. And I had the interview, and it just looked depressing on this campus. And I was like, I don't want to go here. Having seen the place, I changed my mind. And I was a little disappointed, a little depressed. And my mom, who has always been just a vigilant supportive, positive spirit in my life. She was like, let's go check out Amherst. It's just about a half hour, 45-minute drive from Williams. Let's go check it out. And I'm telling you, Donato, like on the drive as we're approaching Amherst, the rain clouds parted, the sun came out. We arrived on Amherst College, and the co-ed walking around everywhere, and it was like, like the Disney scene. The birds were whistling louder, and I was just like, Amherst town is bustling with pizza shops and little places to go shopping, and it just had a really quaint kind of college feel to it.
Yeah.
And I got on campus. I remember going to this place. There's this Memorial Hill that we have there, and it's a World War memorial, and then a large hill that looks out onto the playing fields, and then in the background is the mountains. And I was just blown away, and I said, "Yep, this is where I'm going if I get in." And I was lucky enough to get in, and that's where I went to college, Amherst College.
Did you look to swim or play football while you were there?
So I wanted to play soccer, and I did everything I could during my time at Amherst to get onto the varsity team, but I never made the cut. One summer, I think it was between my sophomore and junior year, I was back home in Minneapolis. I was doing an internship, playing on 2 soccer teams, plus running outdoors and doing weight training. And I got incredible shape, great touch on the ball, great strength. And I didn't make it. And I was like, okay, maybe some things just aren't meant to be. I continued to play intramural, but I pulled back from competitive sports at Amherst. And with swimming, I was paired, my college freshman roommate, I was into math, he was into math. I had been toying with the idea, even had an interview with the Air Force, but with my contacts, remember Top Gun had just come out, and being an airline, Air Force pilot, that it sounded exciting. Well, I was one of those, young men that was intrigued enough to kind of explore the option. And I discovered, because of my eyesight deficiency, that wouldn't be a possibility.
Right.
But my college freshman roommate was an Air Force ROTC. And I liked math. He liked math. So on paper, Amherst had done a really good job kind of matching this up. We didn't gel so much, though, in that freshman year, though, because, again, I was fully investigating this question for myself of what does it mean to be Black? And he was a white guy. And that, from freshman year, I was socializing almost exclusively with other Black students. So I also recognized that I think I might have been a stronger math, had been gifted with maybe greater ability with mathematics.
Yeah.
And I also sensed that, and which is easier to tell kind of empirically, because his times were faster. He was a much stronger swimmer. He was a taller guy, lankier build, and he was a faster swimmer and was going to be more competitive. And for some reason, I didn't feel like competing with him. And I kind of said, I think I made a deal in my head. All right, math is going to be my thing, and I'll let him do the Air Force and the like he's like I have any control of what he was going to decide anyway. Yeah. But I just made a decision for myself that I wasn't going to do swimming, and coupled with the fact that I was exploring what it meant to be Black, that's when I decided to start learning how to play basketball.
Oh, okay.
All right.
How'd that game turn out? How'd that b-ball game turn out?
It turned out good. I was a shooting guard. That's what I developed into. I'm not a particularly tall person. I'm just 5'9". Yeah. My handle is okay. I can drive to the net, not, where I used to. Now I just shoot around if I go to the gym. But soccer and basketball are quite interesting in terms of defense and some attacking moves. Yeah, so that carried over fairly well. And I just ended up developing a fairly good shot. And my trajectory, I was like a, not very good player. It wasn't actually until I had graduated and was in New York, and I was going to a gym, and a fraternity brother said to me, he kind of gave me just like 15 minutes of coaching. He says, Peter, the trick in basketball is learning how to do one thing really, really well. And once you learn how to do that, add a second thing, but focus on just getting one thing down. So I practiced this kind of turnaround bank shot over and over and over until I got, really high percentages on it. Then I would move to free throws. And then, by 5-6 years later, I was, good percentages on 3-point shots, that kind of thing. Yeah. I had a lot of fun playing basketball. I moved after graduation. I was living in Brooklyn, going to the neighborhood courts and, challenging kids half my age and having a lot of fun, bumping and getting scrapped. And I have a cut on my eye from some kid's, his tooth ended up, hit the corner of my eye. So, I have some war wounds from it. But I've kind of hung up the boots, the basketball high tops, because I can't handle the pounding anymore. Yeah,
no, I understand. New York, huh? So you went to New York. Of all the boroughs, which one is your favorite? I'm gonna get you in a little trouble here.
No trouble. By far and away, my favorite is Brooklyn. It is Brooklyn because it's the one that I'm most familiar with. Yeah. When I pledged, I remember being in Fort Greene Park. I remember going to Long Island University. I met a Kappa sweetheart in Brooklyn, who later helped me and a couple other brothers when we first moved to New York find an awesome apartment on Gates and Green, which later I found out is, I can't remember, is it Special Ed who mentions it in his the corners of Gates and Green. I can't remember which song it is, but I can't remember. I'm not going to remember it right now. But anyway, it was beautiful little Clinton, Washington, Fort Greene area, Brooklyn brownstones, red brick buildings, kind of 3-4 stories high, parks dappled throughout the neighborhoods. Yeah. Fulton Street and all of the variety of different restaurants and things like that. Have a lot of fond memories. I did live 1 year in Harlem, just didn't compare, and never even considered any other borough. I've since have some familiarity with the Bronx. My wife's family is from the Bronx, and they continued. They live there to this day. So I have a little bit of familiarity there, but it was tough when we decided to move out of the city. We now live in Westchester, which is just north of New York City, and leaving Brooklyn was difficult, but we did it for the right reasons. We did it because we were starting a family. We had children, and alternate side street parking, going shopping, food shopping. It just wanting to be closer to the in-laws. There were a lot of good reasons for moving up here, but Brooklyn is my favorite.
No problem. I could see that. My dad's from Brooklyn. He's a Bedford Stuyvesant guy. Mom was born in Manhattan. Spent my time visiting family up there, and I love it. I love it. I visit pretty often. Unfortunately, most of the times I go, I get hotels in Manhattan. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you had to make that declaration of your favorite. That's a tough call. So we talked New York basketball. Let's get to some current. So Peter, I really we got some amazing background there. I'm going to tell you, that was one of my more pleasant background talks. You can go back. This is episode 67. Challenge me on any of the other ones. I enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. And I don't get to talk Minnesota. I don't think anybody talks Minnesota often. So, so I think we kept some listeners in tune. Some travel agents are thanking us for that now, if they still have travel agents to do that kind of thing. So Peter, what do you do now? Like, what's a guy that is a self-declared mathematics person? What are you doing now? Because something tells me mathematics, man, they switch you over to computer programmer or something, right?
Yeah. Very briefly, what I do now and how I got to where I'm at. Yeah. I'm an ex-banker. So after college, I went to Wall Street. I went to London Wall, the Wall Street in London, England. Retired from that industry and became an entrepreneur. And jack of all trades really does apply to me. It wasn't just strictly startup entrepreneurship. It was a period, starting about 2 decades ago, of me finally, having put some money aside for myself and my eventual family. I was now going to go into a period where I would explore and try to identify, what do I really want to do with my life? Mm-hmm. So any and all kind of things that occurred to me as interesting, I've given, a fair shake at. I've tried 2 times pursuing a mathematics degree to become a math professor, but both times as I got into it, it just didn't seem to be a fit, and I kind of redirected. When I first moved to Brooklyn, the house that I was in, the weeds were growing in the backyard, were up to my forehead. So I clear cut it, amended the soil, planted a garden, and rediscovered from my youth kind of a love for taking care of a lawn and gardening and horticulture. And so I did a semester of a master's of landscape design at Columbia University. Mm-hmm. And it was too far removed from kind of soil and dirt, the kind of practical knowledge that I wanted to gain. So I dropped that and ended up getting a 2-year certificate from the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, certificate of horticulture. And after that, I had this nice, beautiful backyard to enjoy. But then I opened Green Spaces, a landscaping company. Mm-hmm. Went out on some bids. I eventually outsourced myself to a small landscaping company. But, carrying 40-pound bags of soil up and down Manhattan stairwells, and that and some other reasons, it kind of lost the allure from a professional perspective. Yeah. I still enjoy the outdoors, and I like, a nicely manicured lawn, but I decided it's not what I wanted to do professionally.
Yeah.
I opened a al fresco coffee shop. A friend of mine had a vacant lot next to his brother's restaurant in Brooklyn. And every day for a summer, I would go to a coffee bean roaster and select what I thought were the most delicious, fresh tasting beans, have them ground fresh, and then make, 2 or 3 gallons of coffee and sell it on the street to passersby. And I rediscovered kind of a love for salesmanship, something that I had done a little bit when I was younger and a little bit in banking. But I rediscovered kind of how much I liked connecting with people and, for want of a better word, kind of convincing them through offering a valuable product, something for them to purchase. The biggest entrepreneurial venture that I did prior to what I'm currently doing was called 555NM. And in this idea, I gathered with some friends and colleagues to develop kind of a Netflix model, but for a different customer segment. We were going to curate content for underrepresented filmmakers, female directors, people of color that were making films, student filmmakers. And we were going to try to kind of be an alternative to Netflix by providing this kind of content. So, all of these ventures were really interesting, and I learned tons, working on them. But more recently, I kind of discovered a new field that caught my eye, and that was health and wellness. So it first arose when my fraternity chapter, the New York alumni chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi up in Harlem, they had a vacancy for their keeper of exchequer, or what is called their treasurer position. Yeah. And they asked me if I wanted to fill it. Again, I had done it previously, and it didn't speak to me. And that kind of occurred to me as strange because I'm kind of a numbers guy. Yeah. And so I did some self-reflection. What is becoming, or what is more meaningful to me now? And with not only people my age, their parents, but even people in my cohort, my age range, starting to die, I realized that quality of life and longevity and health and wellness and health in general were becoming increasingly important. And so I asked the Polmark at the time to create a health and wellness committee, and he did, and he named me chairman. And I just had a great time organizing walks for raising money to fight breast cancer, doing blood drives, partnerships with the American Heart Association. I was just having a fantastic time. And then I had put on some weight at some point, and this is a little bit earlier, and I wanted an app to help me lose that weight. And I did some research into the app marketplace. And what I found, I kind of was dissatisfied. It wasn't giving me the personalized information that I needed. Yeah. So I built something of my own. I built it on my computer and used what I built to lose 60 pounds of weight. And I was like, wow, this works. And there's a lot of people that are probably could benefit from this, but I'm not a computer programmer, and I don't know how to get this out to them. So I kind of just put it on the back burner. And then I get in 2020 this email from Amherst College saying, hire an Amherst intern. And it just clicked. And I said, hey, maybe I could take that idea off the back burner and bring it to the front. And, we were just off to the races. The first person that I hired was an Amherst intern. She was a graphic artist as well as a computer scientist, and majored with law and jurisprudence. She put together some beautiful wireframes, which are just initial design, conceptual drawings of what an app could be called. And, this spreadsheet that I had built, in recent years, it was like on column C, row 40. next to that was the value. Well, in that cell C40, I had written the difference. It was calories in minus calories out equals the difference. Yeah. And that is what the name of the company that I founded, with the help of this first hire and her conceptual drawings. I decided to move ahead and found a company called The Difference. And now we've got this weight management app that's in the Google and Apple Play stores. And so, I've continued with health and wellness with the fraternity at a charitable level. I'm now the provincial chair for the Northeastern province of health and wellness, and I sit on the national committee. So I'm doing it charitably. I'm in health and wellness professionally. And in my personal life, I'm also involved with it, setting, and accomplishing and setting goals related to health and wellness. And it's just become a really important aspect of my life.
Peter, I wonder though, when you're that heavy into health and wellness, when's the last time someone called you up to hang out? Because it sounds like, man, if I reach out to Peter, he's going to want to go for a walk. Have the invites start to dry up?
Well, let's see here. Yeah, I think I've started, and I know you're joking around a little bit, but I'll get serious. I socialize less now. Understandably, I'm married and I have kids. So right now, these days leading up to the anniversary of the founding of our fraternity on January 5th,
can't wait.
I'm making strong decisions and leaning against going out and kind of celebrating with my brothers on January 5th. And that is inconceivable 5 years ago. I would definitely be out. But the reason isn't so much like Peter's the healthy guy and wouldn't go out and do that. Yeah. It's Peter is health conscious, and I'm concerned about COVID.
Sure.
My family and I are a very kind of COVID conservative family. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, at this moment, my mother, my brother, and my sister-in-law are all recovering from COVID. So it's not just headlines for me. It's hitting home in the family. And I would very much like to go out and celebrate on J5 and see my brothers, as well as J6. We have a party that night. But I'm leaning against it. Let me see here. So yeah, and I think just the natural path of maturity. Now I'm not in my 20s or 30s where I'm single and looking to mix and mingle. I'm not doing that anymore. But as I've aged, I think the frequency of going out has decreased, proportionate with my age. But no, I don't think anyone would say, if they were thinking of like, who could we call to, go have a drink with? Well, let's not call Peter because he's health and wellness chairman and he's going to say something to us about smoking cigars. I'll be there hanging out. I won't be smoking a cigar, but I'll probably be having, a cocktail or a beer and laughing it up, dancing. I might even do a little step with some of the younger guys. Yeah.
You haven't retired the party hops, so there's nothing wrong. You get that stroll on, Pete. You get that stroll on. All right, so
no, I have retired it, but there are some new ones that I get to learn every once in a while.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. But I want to come back. What would your peers say about you to describe you?
Which peers? Fraternal, familial?
You can pick. Which path?
What would my peers say? I mean, when I think about my peers, I think about the people that I socialize with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those are fraternity related.
Okay.
I'm heavily involved in the entrepreneurial system. So there's a lot of other entrepreneur kind of co-founders and CEOs that I'm mixing and mingling with. My company and I have participated in 2 accelerators. So, we're in this kind of startup community. We're in this, I'm in this fraternal setting. Let me see here. Well, maybe the best way to say it is not describing myself, but to kind of say what I've heard.
Yeah.
One of my program managers, he said to me, "You're a hard worker."
Oh, okay.
And I think I am. I do. My company, The Difference, is in stealth mode, and we're preparing imminently to come out with a public launch with press release and starting to purchase advertisement and that kind of stuff. Yes. So as I've been building this, I've needed to support the finances, the personal finances of my family. And I do have a part-time gig. And I was actually there earlier tonight before this interview. Mm-hmm. And when I observe myself, I go there, and it's not being a managing director, or I actually didn't reach that title. I reached director when I was in banking. I'm not managing anyone. It's a relatively simple job, but when I go there, I go to get work done, and I take it seriously. And I recognize that there's always the possibility of to be honest with The Difference, for me, failure is like not an option. I'm going to keep pushing at it. But I also recognize that some things are outside of my control. And if ultimately this is not meant to be, and God does not have that in the cards for me, then I'll need to look for an alternate path. And one of those paths is this part-time, job that I'm doing to support finances, turning it into a full-time job and getting into a managerial position with that company. So when I'm there, I'm all business, and I'm positioning myself, well, so that if that has to be my fallback, then, hopefully there will be opportunities there as well. So, I'm a hard worker. If there is a fault, to work too hard, for various reasons, I've always strove to be a high achiever. Mm-hmm. And I think some of those motivations to be a high achiever when I was very young were a little more fear driven. Yep. But as I've come into my adulthood and dealt with some of those earlier fear issues, I think it kind of achievement-oriented attitude and discipline, it has remained because I assigned some value to it and saw some benefit from it. So, hard worker, I think, is what my peers would say. Can be creative, they might say, maybe a little too serious at sometimes. I'm terrible at telling jokes, absolutely terrible. It takes a lot of practice. I only have one joke credit to my name, and I'll share this. What did the caveman say to his favorite boulder?
I don't know what.
You rock.
That one landed.
But that's it. I don't have to tell after that. I'm a one and done.
It was funny, and I never heard it before, so that's a win with me. I want to switch to what's your dream car?
Dream car. Let's see here. I'm not really into cars. I never have been. They're very practical to me.
Yep.
You know, get from one place to another.
It could be something very efficient. Your dream car could be a great Prius.
It's not. I don't. You know, I wouldn't dream to have a truck. You know, a utilitarian thing, or a SUV, or a minivan. You know, it's not a utilitarian thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I would dare to dream to have an expensive car, it would probably be a higher performance vehicle. I'm not sold on the EVs and kind of the Tesla type stuff. It would probably be something more traditional. Probably not like muscle. I'm thinking it probably would be an import. I don't know. I've never really looked at the offerings, but I don't know. An Italian, a Lamborghini, or maybe an Aston Martin. Kind of distinguished James Bond type thing. I really don't know, but it's not something that I put a lot of thought into. What I have put a thought into is colors. It would be an eye-catching car with the light blue and the orange color scheme that we've associated with my company that I'm growing. I like the color scheme a lot, and I think I would get a vanity license plate with our social media handle on. That's as far as I've dared to dream when it comes to
always working. That's hard working there to a T. All right. I believe in 6 degrees of separation, Peter, and I want to know, who is the most interesting person in your life, and what will you do to help me get them on this podcast? Interesting does not always mean most famous. If you know someone that's really famous and they're interesting, okay, great. But I want someone that you think is interesting.
Wow.
Maybe you came across someone when you were working. I think you were talking accelerations. If there was another startup CEO, or if it was a fraternity brother you came across that was doing something from New York to Toronto back and forth, but can speak French, or someone that wowed you. It could be recent. You don't have to push you all the way back to the beginning of your life, but
I don't know if you're gonna like this, Lancer, because I'm being kind of slippery, but from what I know about you and this series of podcasts, of having conversations with people, I suspect that you and I are very like-minded in the sense that everyone has a story. Everyone has testimony to give, and they have interesting stories and relationships and things that have gone, they've experienced during their life. So when you asked me this question of like, who would be the most interesting, I was immediately flooded with, well, my wife would obviously, or I don't want to say my wife. Her name is Risha Conroy. She exists outside of being my wife. She is creating the Dyslexia Alliance for Black Children. She has 2 master's degrees. And then I was like, oh wait, what about the guy that created Watch the Yard, Jonathan Rabb? He just got a BET 40 Under 40 award. He's, a relatively new father. I just discovered, a really warm and congenial and creative powerhouse. And then I thought about some of my advisors from my company. Some of them, one of them pledged me, and he's now the entrepreneurial chair at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I thought about one of my fraternity brothers who's now deceased, Jonathan Hicks. He, if he were still alive, I would say he would be within my circle. I would have named Jonathan as one of those people, in the sense that he was a like 5-star quality chef. He was a comedian. He's been in movies. He was a page one B section of the of the New York Times political correspondent. He was a singer. He sung at basically every fraternity brother's wedding on the East Coast that I know of. And he knows, his Rolodex was unlimited, and he had, this uncanny ability just to be able to speak to everyone and anyone as if, it was a personal, intimate relationship. Just, just mind-boggling. I would speak to, who else do I find? And so I was just flooded with, well, I love to talk to that person. I love to talk to that person. And
I have received those answers. There's a gentleman that was going to give me, he's going to give me his patriarch, his 88-year-old uncle who dealt with racism growing up down in Tennessee, and some years where, he can remember when it was white only, black only, two water fountains. I have an award-winning author who's sold thousands of books, and he wants to introduce me to his mom. So now you're the first that would offer their wife as an example, but yeah, it's wherever you steer.
When you mention kind of storytelling, now I'm also reminded of there's a fraternity brother, a Kappa, and a Sigma that I have worked with in some capacity previously, and I'm still involved with in some capacity. They're co-founders of a company called Black Facts. Ken Granderson and Dale Dowdy. And Ken, an MIT guy, what has been on the internet scene since the very start, getting Boston and Black Boston kind of uploaded onto the internet before, this is like 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. And, now they have the largest online repository and distributor of Black history and cultural achievement online. And hundreds, over 1,000 of different videos, all categorized that, Ken could talk about the history of the internet and technology developments and IT developments and the use of AI. And, he would be a very topical and pertinent person, I think, to talk about. So
I'm in agreement. I met him in 2007, and even then I saw where we are now from his vision and his the moves that he was making to get to this point now. Yeah, I do know Brother Granderson through Boston alumni.
Yeah.
Being a fraternity brother. Yeah.
So I think, if you ask me that question, tomorrow, it might be, I might list the people that I've spoken to, in the morning, I'm one of those people. When I meet somebody new, what I'm increasingly trying to do is just find out about them, what their interests are, what their work is about, who they're about, see if there's ways that I can introduce people from my network to them. And it's very different. I notice answering this question, how much difficulty I'm having now, because it's like the answer I want to give is everybody.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I like that you do that. This is one of the reasons I use this question. And I always tell all my guests, because this podcast is not an I got you podcast, but this is my little make people squirm. It's hard. And I gain so much, because the reason I ask it allows me, the way you ran it down, Peter, was perfect, because you're reminding me of so many more opportunities out there for me to have conversations with people. You remind me that I can go down this path and I can talk with this person and that person. And that's why I do it, about what I can gain. It's never really about the one. I even like it when someone says, oh yeah, I got one, but I may have an honorable mention. And then when I'm talking to them off of the podcast, I had a young lady the other day, she instant message, or she DM'd me, and she's like, here's another 4 people. And I was like, wow, okay, you gave me one on the air, and then 4 more, I'll take it. And it's just great. It's a lot of fun. That's why I do this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it is really commendable to not only take interest in other people as you're doing, but then providing a platform for those stories that you're exploring and cultivating to be shared with others. And that's why the work that Ken and Dale are doing came to mind, because one of the projects they have considered is capturing the audio histories of people of color. And, you know, I can't remember the terminology he used, but kind of cataloging these stories, these oral histories that would otherwise be lost and forgotten. And his, one of their aims is, you know, Black history has been erased at several points in history. Their platform is about making sure that will never happen again.
No, that's exactly when Uncle Prentice, Uncle Wells, when that episode is everyone's favorite uncle. When he said his uncle, and he told me of this 90-year-old gentleman and all the things that he had to endure and his successes and failures, I immediately thought, and I think I even said this on the pod, this will be a historical episode for your family. Mm-hmm. There are people, where else can Uncle be, and he can talk for an hour about his experiences, and then we can go back, and then for generations to come, we have this, because they don't have anything like that. And I'm not trying to be the savior. I'm not trying to get a pat on the back for that family, but that's what I thought. And I thought that's the usefulness. I always say, I told you off there, if I get my viral moment, that's great. That means I can leave my personal day job and focus on something that I feel I'm amazing at and I love to do and I don't see as work. But that moment hasn't come for me yet. And I'm still going to be pursuing opportunities like that with him. And I personally want to hear the stories. My mom, she was born in Manhattan, but she grew up down in North Carolina. And I remember when she took me to her hometown, so small town, she showed me, and sure enough, there are 2 water fountains. And she said, see this one? This is the one that I could drink from, and this one I could not. I, growing up, didn't know anything about that. Like, I've never seen that, didn't know of that. But for her to put that on me at such a 9 or 10-year-old age, I mean, your world is just exploded because you don't get it. Like, who would discriminate against my mom? Mm-hmm. I'm a preacher's kid. My mom, I'm not getting into a religious thing, I'm not saying, but she's a nice person. Most religions try their best to tell you just to be a nice person. My mom's a nice person. Never heard my mom curse a person or say anything bad about a person in her life because she's following that path. And really, you would stop my mom from being able to drink out of that? It's just incredible. So chasing that story, I'm coming back. Uncle Prentice, if you're watching this episode, I still got your number. I'm coming back for you. I will follow up a little more on that because maybe even tomorrow you might give me something else. I want to ask you something else that I ask throughout my series here. If you were to retire and hang it all up, the kids are gone. They're off in college and pursuing their dreams. Where would you where would you call your retirement home? Where are you leaning?
I did some creative exploration regarding that question about 2 decades ago, and I envisioned a kind of cabinish type house on the water. Water is something that agrees with me very well, kind of the stillness of water. Sure. And being at the kind of base of some hills, maybe some mountains. So kind of having an outdoor, mountainous and lakeside kind of environment. Subsequently, I've thought I married into they're Black Americans, but they trace their lineage in the Caribbean. And I visited the Caribbean, including some of the places where my in-laws are from, and I could see kind of a lower key lifestyle, just kind of paring down to bare essentials, eating kind of fresh food each day, and swimming and getting some exercise in the Caribbean seas. That appeals as well. Yeah, but I don't have a lot of time right now to kind of envision that kind of stuff, because I'm very much involved in the moment right now, trying to figure out how to make my company a success. And some of those kind of dreams I recognize can only be realized with certain thresholds of capital.
Sure.
And so the things that are not capital related, I really hope that when I retire, that I will have some semblance of family, of faith, of community, connection to my immediate family. I'm a father, so I want to stay in regular contact with my children. God willing, my marriage will last and continue to thrive. So there are some things which are non-capital kind of connected, that and those things might be, if I'm living in a co-op or a condominium or a studio apartment in Brooklyn, that I might still have some of those quality of life things.
Peter, we've covered a wide variety of items here, and I know I still have more, but that's good. I always like to leave, as I say, a little meat on the bone. It allows me to come back and have a great direction to go with my guests. I appreciate your time here today. I do have to ask you, for some of the listeners that may be interested, do you have a social media presence that they could follow? Or I certainly would like to, maybe, I know you said you're in stealth mode, but if you wanted to give them a little guidance to look into your app, your business, how could they follow and or continue to track your successes?
Thank you. I actually do keep a a minimal personal social media presence.
Sure.
But to find out more about the difference, you can visit our website, which is www.thedifferenceapp.com. And we can be found on all social media platforms at the DIFF app, the DIFF app. You can look for our weight management app, which has artificial intelligence, machine learning, True Burn, which will give you a personalized estimate of the number of calories that you actually are burning each day, as opposed to the generic guesses that the rest of our competitors are giving you. And that app is called the Difference app, and it can be found in the Apple app and Google Play stores by searching for the following words: the Difference app, and then predict weight.
Man, that's awesome. I'm going to, I unfortunately am I'm getting over some injuries, so not in my tip-top shape that I'm normally in, but I use a competitor that I'd be very interested in switching over to support, and I'm going to look those up. So thank you for that, and I can't wait. I'd like to be one of your success stories that you could pass along to others.
I'd love that as well.
I certainly would like to take a few off, and I need to. Peter, this was great. This, for those who, if you're just learning about this gentleman, I've admired him from afar. I thought that this was going to be exactly as this episode went. He is awesome. Episode 67 with our guest, Peter Conroy. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Donato. I enjoyed this very much.
Thank you.